Breaking news: Ukraine has significantly escalated its campaign of drone strikes against Russian oil infrastructure, marking one of the boldest phases of the conflict since Moscow's full-scale invasion began in February 2022. The latest wave of attacks, which targeted several major refineries deep inside Russian territory, highlights Kyiv's evolving strategy to weaken Russia's wartime economy by hitting at its most critical revenue source, energy exports. For months, Ukrainian officials have argued that oil revenue continued to fuel the Kremlin's war machine, allowing Russia to purchase weapons, fund military logistics, and sustain its massive defense budget despite Western sanctions. By striking directly at refineries, storage facilities, and oil terminals, Ukraine hopes to cut off billions of dollars in revenue, disrupt Russia's domestic fuel supply, and demonstrate that no critical infrastructure is beyond reach. According to reports from Ukrainian military intelligence, long-range drones struck facilities in the Samara, Nizhny Novgorod, and Rostov regions over the past week, igniting large fires and forcing temporary shutdowns. Satellite images confirmed widespread damage at least 2 refineries, with thick black smoke rising from processing units. Moscow initially downplayed the strikes, but later admitted that production at several plants was temporarily suspended. Western analysts note that while the immediate production loss may be modest compared to Russia's total refining capacity, the psychological and logistical effects are significant. Each strike forces Russian authorities to divert resources toward defense, increases insurance costs for energy operators, and shakes investor confidence in Moscow's ability to protect its economic backbone. Kyiv's move also signals a shift from purely defensive tactics to more offensive, asymmetric operations designed to extend the battlefield into Russia's own territory. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has repeatedly argued that war must not be confined to Ukraine's soil alone when Russia continues to launch missiles and drones at Ukrainian cities. Striking refineries hundreds of kilometers inside Russia sends a powerful message of deterrence while boosting morale among Ukrainians exhausted by nearly 4 years of conflict. However, the strikes have not come without controversy. Several Western allies, particularly in Europe, have expressed concern that repeated attacks on Russian energy assets could destabilize global oil markets. Russia remains one of the world's largest exporters of crude oil, diesel, and other refined products. Any sustained disruption could trigger supply shortages, push up fuel prices, and hurt economies worldwide, especially in developing nations already grappling with inflation. The United States has reportedly urged Kyiv to limit its operations against Russian refineries, fearing knock-on effects on international markets. Washington officials acknowledge Ukraine's right to self-defense but warn that hitting oil facilities risks escalating the war into a broader economic confrontation. Energy security, they argue, is a global issue, and deliberate strikes against key infrastructure carry unpredictable consequences. Despite these warnings, Ukrainian officials insist that their campaign is necessary and justified. They point out that Russia has relentlessly targeted Ukraine's own energy grid since the winter of 2022, destroying power plants, substations, and transmission lines, leaving millions without heat and electricity during freezing months. Russia cannot expect immunity for its energy system while it systematically destroys ours, a senior Ukrainian defense advisor told local media. Military experts also highlight the technological ingenuity behind the strikes. Ukraine has rapidly developed domestically produced long-range drones capable of flying over 1,000 kilometers. These relatively inexpensive weapons can bypass Russia's air defenses and cause disproportionate damage to high-value targets. The use of swarm tactics, deploying multiple drones simultaneously, has further overwhelmed Russian anti-aircraft systems, exposing weaknesses in what Moscow claims to be one of the world's most sophisticated defense networks. The attacks have forced Russia to adapt quickly. Reports suggest that Moscow is relocating some refinery operations further east, away from Ukrainian drone range, while deploying additional air defense systems around critical plants. Yet such moves are costly and slow, and they underscore the vulnerability of Russia's vast energy infrastructure, much of which was never designed to withstand modern drone warfare. On the diplomatic front, the strikes have complicated already tense relations between Russia and its trading partners. Countries like India, China, and Turkey, which have become major buyers of discounted Russian oil since Western sanctions took effect, are monitoring the situation closely. If refinery outages deepen, Russia may struggle to fulfill export commitments, potentially souring relations with even its closest energy partners. Global energy markets have reacted nervously. Brent crude prices ticked upward following news of the latest strikes, reflecting traders' fears of prolonged supply disruptions. Shipping insurers have also raised premiums for tankers loading from Russian ports, adding further pressure on Moscow's export revenues. Energy analysts warn that if strikes continue at this pace, the cumulative impact could erode Russia's ability to finance the war within a year. Meanwhile, inside Ukraine, the attacks are being hailed as a demonstration of resilience and innovation. State media celebrated the strikes as evidence that Ukraine can hit back against an adversary that once seemed untouchable. Videos of burning refineries circulated widely on social media, fueling national pride and reinforcing the narrative that Kyiv will not back down. Yet the risks remain high. Russia has vowed retaliation, with Kremlin officials declaring that attacks on our energy infrastructure will not go unanswered. Military observers fear Moscow could escalate its own strikes on Ukrainian civilian infrastructure, including nuclear power facilities, to exact revenge. The cycle of escalation could deepen humanitarian suffering and further complicate peace efforts. International mediators, including the United Nations and the European Union, are urging restraint on both sides. While acknowledging Ukraine's right to self-defense, they stress that targeting energy infrastructure carries consequences that ripple far beyond the battlefield. The global economy, already strained by inflation, climate challenges, and geopolitical tensions, could ill afford a sustained energy crisis. Looking ahead, Ukraine faces a delicate balancing act, maximizing pressure on Russia's war economy while maintaining the support of Western allies who remain crucial for military aid, financial assistance, and diplomatic backing. The success or failure of this strategy could shape the next phase of the war and determine whether Ukraine can shift the momentum after years of grueling stalemate. In the end, the strikes on Russian refineries may mark a turning point in how modern wars are fought. By leveraging low-cost drones against high-value infrastructure, Ukraine has demonstrated a new form of economic warfare, one that bypasses traditional battlefields and directly targets the financial arteries of a hostile state. Whether this strategy brings Ukraine closer to victory or drags the world deeper into economic turmoil scene,